You had Germany sell close to 3 billion of Bitcoin. So you're telling me that you're selling a hard asset to buy for euros that you can print. And imagine a country like the US that says, no, we're actually going to print money to buy Bitcoin. Regardless of whether Trump or someone like Jamie Dimon goes out and says that publicly, I think, again, the narrative is intact. We had an ETF that legitimizes this asset class incredibly. You best believe that this has just become, you couldn't even whisper Bitcoin when I was at JP Morgan in the elevator. I mean, and that has been the case for forever until recently.
This episode is brought to you by Sei. After several months of effort, Sei's V2 launch has introduced the first high-performance parallelized EVM to the world. Stay up to date by following Sei at Sei Network. That's SEI Network. You can also experience Sei's speed firsthand at sei.io. Special thanks to Sei for sponsoring Empire. Hey everyone, the Polygon Community Grants Program was launched with 1 billion tokens, all for Polygon builders. Really excited to share that on today's episode of Empire. Season 1 of the Polygon Community Grants Program is now live. It features 35 million in Matic to support the next generation of Polygon projects. Join the aggregated future today by applying at polygon.technology/grants. Big thanks to Polygon for sponsoring Empire. Hey everyone, Jason here. Before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to tell you about your wallet's new best friend, Harpie. Harpie guards your digital assets 24/7, blocking sketchy transactions before they even happen. But that's not the best part. It's totally free. Secure your wallet for free at harpie.io/empire. Link in the description. Now, let's get into today's episode. Hey everyone, Jason here. Have you ever wanted to play casino games with your friends right from your couch? I'm excited to tell you about MyPrize, the first multiplayer online casino where you can play, chat, and win together. When you make your first deposit of $10 or more, you'll get $20 for free. Head on over to myprize.com/invite/empire to get started. Bada bing, bada bing, bada boom.
GM, everyone.
What's up?
Well, stark contrast to last week. I guess there's a lot to talk about, so we just dive right into it. It feels like big turnaround.
We would have looked much smarter last week if we said this is the calm before the storm, but instead we said there's nothing to talk about. But yeah, I mean, week over week difference from last week to this week. Last week it felt like not much news. Germany selling, prices are getting hammered, and this week, yeah, it's feeling pretty bullish going into today. So
yeah, let's talk about we always talk about narratives here, right? And trying to hopefully get ahead of narratives. And a common theme that I keep going back to is like we look at prior cycles and we say it was so obvious. We overfit it. COVID, stimulus checks, people inside, they're punting, they're bored, they're punting. And somehow it's just important to recognize that in the moment, the market gives you plenty of reasons to be sidelined, to be really shitting your pants. I think the conclusion is position sizing. I'm almost certain, I'm never certain of anything, that it comes down to position sizing, because in moments of choppiness, in moments, you're going to be more predisposed to like be shaken out. And it hasn't been comfortable for anyone. Like investing is not meant to be easy, right? But like, let me ask you a question. What is, as you sit here today, and I texted you this before we went on the pod. For me, this cycle, the narrative is intact. It's not up only narrative. It's not, there is a cycle to things. There is a psychology to things, but the narrative is very much intact. And that is, we just had an ETF approved. We've been waiting for it forever. And all this asset class was hugely legitimized. And all the work that has been going on the background for the last decade plus of evangelizing, of convincing people this is actually important, then it could be properly implemented, right? And we're not even seeing the full extent of that. But it's that, right? If you fast forward 3 years from now, where we're back in down 80%, we're going to look back and say, oh yeah, it was so obvious. Like we had an ETF, we had all the signs pointing to greater, regulatory clarity. And things on the margin obviously make it more in the moment, but like, I don't know, like, why are we why does the timeline, I guess, go from peak extreme to euphoria from week to week? That's kind of something new
Yeah.
I've observed. I'm just
Yeah.
kind of curious, like, how could you explain that? I don't really know.
I think the explanation is because in past cycles, so here's my working thesis is that in past cycles, it felt like deep bear, like the bear market was down. Then we started, it was like smoother cycles. There were some like bad cycle, there, like
Was
felt
it
like,
though? Because you
it,
always have these 10, 20. I mean, my God, in 2014, like
yeah, you
you
had,
would have
I
shit
mean,
your
yeah,
you
yeah.
would have
In the
shit your
bull market, you had
pants
these
with the ball.
six drawdowns of 30% that people like to look at. But this one I think this bull market feels a little different than other ones. And so people are kind of like what's going on? Like what's going on here? Like, and actually we gave so we had the company all hands for Blockworks yesterday. And we have 70 people at Blockworks now, 24 new people. So 24 people, 23 people started in the last 6 months.
Wow.
And a lot of those folks uh, know what is happening on their teams, but they wanted to know like what's happening at the rest of Blockworks and like get everyone in line. But also they wanted to hear Mike and my thoughts on this cycle. And Mike kind of led this part of the conversation, but I can maybe abbreviate what he talked about. He said, look, there's probably like three working theories on what's going on with this cycle. Um, the first working theory is that ETFs have kind of changed the game, right? The institutions are here. ETFs have changed the game. Previously, the cycles were so violent because it was just retail led and retail buys and they get very exuberant and then they sell and they have to sell everything because they use a lot of leverage. And that caused these violent upswings and downswings. First, maybe narrative or like thesis is that the ETFs have arrived, institutions are just going to keep buying. That kind of leads to a slower grind up. That's theory number one. Theory number two is that ETFs actually pulled forward a lot of the growth in buying. They probably pulled it forward by like 6 to 9 months. So we actually have a pretty normally observed cycle, which is intact right now. The growth that you might see in like a little later just got pulled forward. And then
Mhm,
that's why we've been like kind of choppy or down for the last
mhm,
couple of months is because the growth that was supposed to come maybe around this time or in the fall got pulled forward with the Bitcoin ETF. And then I think the third theory is like, look, maybe it just gets easier to buy these ETFs and you buy it on your Robinhood and Schwab accounts
mhm.
and you don't actually pivot into like the long tail and retail ends up staying in these ETFs. They don't spill over into on-chain products.
Yeah.
And I think the third one, I would agree with Mike on this. The third one is probably pretty unlikely in my mind. I don't think retail just buys ETFs and
Mhm,
stays inside of their Schwab accounts. I think it's some
mhm.
combo of one and two. But though that is making the cycle feel a little weird because it really is. There haven't been new people. Like when you hear people bitching about ECC, it's like, why are people bitching about ECC? My theory is it's not about the side events. It's not about overhyped infrastructure or whatever. It's there's no new entrants. And a lack of new
Well, it's
entrants makes these
prices.
things really
Yeah.
like it kind of breaks some of the what should happen in cycles. So that's my working theory of what's happening.
Yeah. I would agree with some of that. I think it's really painful to observe the Nasdaq and the market rip all-time highs and crypto not move
Mm,
directionally in line, where it's been high beta, and you would. It's just very difficult. And so I would agree with you. A lot of it is there's just more. There's still money being made. It's PvP. Like a lot of people didn't benefit from like the meme super cycle, mini cycle that we had. Um, and then it's all kind of the the range of universe of things that you can invest in this space continues to go up, and there's like hot pockets that like last months, right? And then
mhm.
people move on this hot ball of money. But yeah, I don't. I've talked to like it's funny because like I from time to time get pinged from more macro funds that invest in crypto. This week, two of them pinged me to want to talk, and they all put back size. They're all flipped super bullish, which is a hallmark of a good investor, just being able to flip
They flip super
on money.
bullish on the
Yeah, fully
markets
allocated.
or on crypto.
They on crypto. They invest. They're macro guys, but they invest in crypto and not just Bitcoin. They invest in. They have like crypto funds, but their background is macro. So I'd like to talk to them, and they both reached out, and they had flipped bearish. They'd gone to stables a couple months ago, primarily because of this construct of like there's no money, new money coming in. You look at ETF flows, and they're just not there, which is what you're saying. but they are now put all the size back on. They're fully allocated, and they both seem to think that the narrative is intact for the rest of the year
Yeah.
and going into the, you know, going into the next couple of years. My question to them was, what really changed? Because I don't think you can really predict why things move. Just sentiment, I guess. Um, and it's like, well, now it's become more and more clear that Trump's going to win. I'm like, well, prediction markets had him at 70 plus for a while. It's not necessarily new. Now he's like, in this solidified himself. But it's like, and yeah, you have Jamie, you have JD Vance. We'll talk about this in the pod, but you're a more political person. I want to get your take on that. But Howard Marks has put out a good memo today, which is like, what has really changed? And like when people talk about certainty and try to predict markets, it's impossible. That's like my takeaway. It's like it's going to become more and more difficult to predict these markets. They're not going to be smooth. There's going to continue to be vol, but markets do what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Now memes are back in the menu. Like the hat's on. All this stuff.
Santi, say more about what you're looking like, what crypto native metrics you look at. I know we were texting about
stablecoin
leverage and stable coins. Can you talk about those two metrics?
Look, Joseph, our producer, was like, we haven't really seen leverage as we did in prior cycles. I'm like, have we? Like, pretty sure we have. Like, there was when the market was going down. I mean, we had one day where it was like the second highest liquidation day in crypto after FTX. So there is open interest. There is leverage in the system. It's moving around. It's getting wiped. I would attribute that. So it's not leverage. It's just there's not new inflows. And when we talk about new inflows, particularly on chain, like alts, right? X ETFs, you look at stablecoins. That to me is the most important metric. Like stablecoin circulation. So when you have the Tether printer coming back on, then there's like a whale alert account on Twitter, which is like marks a lot of these like new prints for USDC and Tether. And I think to me that's probably the most important metric that I'm following on chain, at least. I don't know.
Just the stable coin volumes, basically.
Yeah, stablecoin circulation.
Yeah.
Because like that really went down after FTX for a number of reasons. People didn't want to, like, you're going to stables, then rates go down. Rates on chain on Aave and Maker and Compound are like less than Treasury. So stablecoin volume just stablecoin circulation just went down. But now it's coming back up. So I think that to me is like the most important thing, because then that would be telling you people are exactly stablecoin supply.
Yeah, maybe we can look at it here. So stablecoin supply is now. So I'm looking at this Visa chart. Yeah, it's starting to trend back up. So I mean, it ripped up, trended down in the bear market, and starting, what is this month? September, October 2023.
Front running the Bitcoin ETF, right? You see the meme super cycle. If you were to extrapolate here, like meme market cap, that would have gone up. That's where like WIF and some of the other things peaked, really. There's a bit of a lag, right? But generally speaking, yeah, when you see that chart go up, it's that people want to allocate on chain. And most of the time, they're probably going to allocate to some on the majors, but I would say like a lot of that's like a really good barometer for people's willingness to put money on chain and punt kind of higher risk stuff.
Yeah. What is look at these two charts. So USDC versus Tether. What is your theory on why Tether just continues to print higher, whereas USDC is like making a pretty slow comeback, I'd say?
XUS.
Yeah.
Joe McCann has a really good newsletter. Of course, we've had him on the pod. He was of the mind, and I think he very accurately predicted, inflows were coming in. Central banks were printing, injecting liquidity in the system end of Q3, Q4 last year, but not in the US. And then anecdotally, I've talked to some of the largest fund of funds that are investing in crypto funds. I've talked to crypto managers that are open-ended, so they're raising money. Still crickets.
Yeah.
Like it's been a very challenged fundraising environment for crypto funds. So we still haven't seen new institutional allocation to funds. And to me, that's two things. One, we're early in the cycle still. And two, funds are not getting new capital. And so most of the money coming in is retail, probably from central banks printing money, ex-US. So Tether is more global.
So let me Let me ask you this Joseph question, which I think to pick on. I love you, Joseph. I think Joseph is sometimes a good proxy for what retail can be thinking. And that's why I love asking Joseph, like, what are you thinking about? What do you want us to ask today? And what Joseph wanted us to ask is, he said, I'd love for someone to play devil's advocate on meme coins, just not continuing to send if there's a next leg up this cycle. It feels like the same market conditions that led to meme coins previously are still around, except prices are higher even after the major correction. You've got AI coins still underperforming memes, altcoins not catching bids, SocialFi had a start but fizzled, no mega useful apps, ETH continuing to focus on infrastructure. Why don't meme coins just continue ripping higher here if you think the market sends higher? So would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I guess it's important to have two simultaneous conflicting theories in your brain. I'm probabilistically think the memes, if the market goes up, memes go up. The case where Joseph is describing is, well, in what scenarios does the market go up and meme coins don't go up as much or just go down? I guess certainly anything's possible. It's just a matter of probabilities. Let me just say, uh, I would describe a low probability event where the market goes up. I guess Bitcoin can go up. Bitcoin can hit an all-time high, and the rest of the market may not move as much, including meme coins. Then that's your theory, which is most of the capital just goes to the ETF. And then you extend that further. If we have an ETF, which sounds like we're going to have it pretty soon, then you could see a scenario where Bitcoin and ETH go up and the rest of the market does not, including meme coins. And that might be for a variety of reasons, including just macro shits the bed and it's not a soft landing and we don't have, for a variety of reasons. I guess savings are down and people, although people tend to punt more and go to the casino during a recession, but I mean, I don't know. Like, is there going to be a resurgence so with rate cuts, for instance? Imagine a world where we have 50 basis point rate cuts in Q3 in September. Then I think it would make a resurgence for DeFi projects where the yields go higher. So now people are more inclined and interested in farming and, capturing that juicy yield. That would be my working assumption. Like, so maybe that on the margin, like DeFi just becomes far more interesting and people just move more towards DeFi. But like, have we had any cycle where memes haven't performed on par or better than everything else in the market? I guess memes as a category, right? I mean, it's going to be, of course, within the meme bucket, there's like a chi-square distribution. Like it's a power lot. Like there's a very few names that like actually command most of the market share. Everything else kind of like dies away. The half-life is really short. So like you have consolidation into, last cycle was Doge, Sheeb, and what else? I'm missing one. This cycle you have the Pepe, you have Whiff, you have Popcat and a few of these things that are kind of wanting to hit 1 billion. But then there's a whole slew of like tail end of stuff that just doesn't do well. But if I were to, there's this guy that
Sir, what is Popcat? I've never heard of Popcat.
Popcat is like this cat. The whole theory is that if dog coins do really well, like cats should like like be some percentage of that. I don't like cats.
Wait. Say that again.
The whole we're doing fundamental analysis on
slow down
now.
And just say that again and listen to yourself again.
Listen.
The
idea is, and I'd love someone to come in here and be more educated on this particular topic. I'm sure I'm going to get it.
You know who we should have on is do you know Murad?
Well, yeah, he blew up.
He blew up, but
he's like.
By the way, one of the greatest podcast episodes of all time was Murad on Pomp's podcast in like 2018, giving like the
market's going up, like
the world's most bullish Bitcoin episode. That was the most articulate Bitcoin episode maybe you'll ever hear in your life. Unfortunately, Murad's fund blew up because he was too bullish and got wiped out on I think Black Thursday in March of 2020. But very eloquent speaker. He's positioned his whole fund into meme coins.
Yeah.
And he's got all these elaborate theses on how to buy meme coins. So we should bring
Popcat. The theory of Popcat is if dogs do well, cats should do well as well. Maybe on a more relative basis. And it's like that. It's like that spread of like Bitcoin dominance is like dog dominance for meme coins. Again, this point on Murad, by the way, I think he's not a dumb individual. I mean, Princeton guy, like smart, articulate, position sizing, long-term capital management. That book I mentioned last podcast, like the Forgotten Billionaires, it's all about position sizing. By the way, it's written by a guy, Victor, who was at long-term capital management, ex-Lehman.
Mm.
It's all about position sizing. Every fund that blows up, you might have a right thesis, but if you're using leverage or the position sizing is off, you're going to blow up or lose money. Anyways, just as an anecdote. But Murad, more than welcome coming here and educate us about memes because I'm a noob. I'm just very simple. I just literally own one.
When I
or two maybe.
In 2016, I was working at this venture firm and would walk into
Wait, by the way, is this the first time on the record that I've heard this? Because I had no idea.
I mean,
Yano is a VC, ladies and gentlemen.
I mean, nah. But I would walk into my boss's office. There are these like angry old Stearns, like Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers guys. And I would walk into my boss's office. His name was Tim. And I would show him, like, I was trying to get them to do some crypto deals. I think they looked at like, I don't know, maybe like BitGo Series A or B or something, or Coinbase's Series B or C or something like that. And I would show them, they're like, all right, fine, send me some information. So I'd send them like, Crypto Panda on Reddit or like Crypto Bobby doing a big Twitter thread. And they're like, look, I'm not listening to Crypto Panda about this new asset class. Talk about this new asset class, like get out of my room, kid. And I'm picturing Santi, you talking to these big macro funds. And then they're like, look, guys, you got to go listen to this Santi guy in Empire. And then they listen and you're like, I don't even know the name of it, Bobcat or Popcat or whatever. You're like, look, the thesis is cats more than dogs. Let's talk about some of the other news of the week.
Yeah, for sure.
So there's,
by the way, have we rounded up this discussion on was this a sufficient, like, I don't know if sufficiently clear answer of like in a scenario where memes go down, the market goes up?
Oh, maybe I'd ask you to round out the conversation. Like you mentioned sizing. How do you then think about sizing of meme coins? Because I know you're very bullish on like WIF, for example, but so like, is WIF 1% of your liquid crypto portfolio, or 5 or 10 or 50 or
like it's greater than 10.
Yeah.
It's a top 2 position, top 5.
Wow.
Not by dollars invested, to be fair. So the capital
that sits in the account right now.
Sheer appreciation of it. Yeah, and so that then requires a whole set of things we won't go into this podcast of how you manage a position over time. But
do you ever hedge a position? Like, will you hedge, or you're just like, if I don't like it anymore, I'll just sell it?
I don't short.
Yeah.
I don't short. I'll go to cash. I'll rotate to something else. I don't do pair trades. Like I tweeted about Ondo Maker.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone's going to look at that and say that FTV converges. I am not. Shorting is something that I never want to bet against. I never want to do because your loss is uncapped.
Yeah.
And it's a timing game.
I had a neighbor growing up. He was a short-only hedge fund manager. Yeah. And I just thought this man, he was also one of those people who doesn't have to sleep. He would sleep like 2 hours a night. Just thought this man was nuts.
So this is why Peter Thiel probably said it best. The difference between an optimist and a pessimist. I tend to think that short sellers are like skew pessimists. It's like if you're going to a test. An optimist is like, you can say, hey, so most of the time when you say, I may get an A, and if you don't, you may land somewhere in the middle. But a pessimist is someone that says, I'm definitely going to get an F, and you most of the time get an F, right? If you go into an exam saying I'm going to get an F, you're most likely going to get an F. That's a pessimist. An optimist is like, I don't know, like I don't really know it, but it's not saying you're getting an F. And so, yeah, like you're hedging your response. But yeah, I think Peter Thiel something to that effect, and I just think short sellers are like incredibly cynical or skeptical, and most of the time don't make money. There's good ones out there.
Let's talk about some of the news from this week. A lot of it was related to what I'd call it 2 buckets. One was elites getting behind Bitcoin and Trump and political decisions. So I'd actually love to just talk about JD Vance first. I think there are 2. There's like the headline crypto news, which is Trump picked JD Vance as his running mate. And this, like the headline crypto news is that this means for the first time ever, we have a Bitcoin holder on the presidential ballot. So for context, like, and I think that's very cool. But there's actually, I think, a much more interesting like political lens on this. Well, I think it was just such a smart decision. So I'd love to talk about that. I think it's they're the I don't know if do you want to talk about that? Is that interesting? It's not even a
Yeah,
crypto
yeah, of course. I mean,
conversation. It's
everyone
like
is asking for
yeah,
context. Everyone's asking, it this is JD Vance pro crypto? What is his
right.
views on that? As soon as that came out, should I give background? I mean, I knew about JD Vance in 2016. He put out his book, which is a New York Times bestseller. I think it was a Pulitzer Prize nominee. I don't think he won. The Hillbilly Eulogy, which is this idea like he grew up in a really rural, poor area of Appalachia where most of his classmates were like ended up being, unfortunately, meth heads or didn't go to school, didn't go to college. His point at a time where inequality in the US has continued to grow, his point was sort of very refreshing, which was no, the system gives you the opportunity. I went to public school. Everyone in my class had the opportunity to go. It was free. I went, I applied myself. Then he went to college. Then he went to, I think it was Yale, got his law degree there, and then worked at a venture fund, a pretty good one at that. And so that was like where I stopped 2016. And then I was like, oh, wow, it's actually this guy. And then he went to politics. He was like an Ohio senator, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the TLDR on this. I politics aside. That's like a self made man. And I respect that a lot. I think that represents a lot of what America stands for and what makes it great.
Yeah. Yeah, he's done so right. He was Marine in the Marine. He was in the Marine Corps, deployed to Iraq from 2003 to 2007, 2007, 2009, went to Ohio State.
I say
2010 to
Buckeyes.
yeah, Buckeyes, 2010 to 2013, he went to Yale Law School.
Yeah.
Then he started uh that's when he kind of started writing his book and stuff. He worked as a law clerk in the US, I think it was in Kentucky, I'm pretty sure. He was a law clerk.
Hmm.
Then he went to I think he went to Sidley Austin, practiced law, and then 2016, obviously, he kind of got put on the map, wrote the memoir, Hillbilly Elegy or Eulogy, whatever the
Yeah.
title is. And then 2016, I think after the book, Peter Thiel hired him to work at
Yes.
what's his venture fund,
Mithril.
Mithril
Yeah. It's
Capital.
like his family office.
Yeah, and then
Which, by the way, that family office has been pretty good in buying Bitcoin.
yeah, oh
Like
yeah,
timed
yeah.
it very well.
And then 2017 moves to Ohio, becomes a continues being a VC, but I think leaves Peter Thiel's fund. I'm pretty sure starts focusing on investments in startups, kind of in like as he called it, the American heartland. 2022, he does that for like 5 years. 2022, elected as U.S. Senator for Ohio. 2023, obviously sworn in, and then 2024, we get this big announcement. So that's kind of the resume from a political perspective, because I like to nerd out on this stuff. It's not even related
Mm.
to crypto. People did not think JD Vance was going to get elected. People thought it was going to be, um, people thought you kind of had to appeal to, people thought it was maybe going to be Vivek or Nikki Haley or whoever's, one of the other, another candidate, basically. JD Vance, I think, is such an interesting strategic choice because he sits at the intersection of basically the two groups of the GOP right now. On one side of the GOP, you have like uh the like middle America whites in Appalachia, like that kind of group, like working class Americans. And then on
Mhm.
the other side, you have this new group that's came into the market, came into the party, which is like the new tech oligarch class. Like the Peter Thiels of the world and Chamath and David Sachs and people like that. And I think his ascent, like JD Vance's pick or like his ascension, kind of speaks to the influence of like the new right wing conservative tech elite, but then his policy positions of like isolationism, restoring manufacturing, restricting immigration, those are all theoretically
Like,
beneficial to like the forgotten working class. And
yeah.
I think it's a very 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 savvy pick, because the Trump, like, how I think a big question is like, how will the Trump administration or campaign deliver to both of those groups? I think that
Mm,
remains to be seen. Right, those two groups have very very very
mhm,
different asks, and you can only expend so much political capital
mhm,
to satisfy those two coalitions. So
yeah.
picking someone who sits at the intersection both satisfies satisfies both of those. I think the other interesting thing is it shows how confident Trump is that he's going to win, right? If
Mhm.
you were not as confident, you would have to kind of court the old school conservative campaign beliefs, which is like,
She
maybe
already had that in the bag.
well, the old school GOPers, if you were trying to appeal to them, you would have picked Nikki Haley. If you were trying to do, then there's like trying to appeal to the evangelicals, right? That's why he picked Mike Pence in 2016.
Mhm.
Vance is this like new right candidate who despises the institutional GOP, and
Mhm.
this tells me Trump either clearly sees those groups as either already in the bag or now irrelevant, which is just a interesting evolution of the GOP political party. But I
Yeah.
just think it marks this turning point. So
Yeah. It definitely shows, like, I'm not a political expert. I'm not even gonna go into it. Nor is this a political pod. It's relevant for crypto. Unlike, and we should get into Vitalik's blog post, by the way. Correction. So he actually did not, I believe, work at Mithril. He ended up raising money. He started a venture fund, I believe. I'm looking at here. So he worked initially in Revolution Capital. That was founded by Steve Case, who is the co-founder of AOL. It was like a pretty hot VC. May still be, but not really. And then in 2019 he co-founded a fund called Narya Capital in Cincinnati, and he ended up raising money from Thiel, Eric Schmidt, Mark Andreessen, a bunch of other people. Um, and I think he raised 93 million. So it was investing in like the middle, as you pointed out, like kind of industrial middle America kind of thing. So he has a connection with Thiel, which is obviously ultra like right, but I don't think he worked for Mithril. Just FYI.
I think he,
Um,
I think he did. I've got it. And Axios says he got connected with Peter Thiel via a 2-year stint at Mithril Capital.
oh, okay,
But
then
either
maybe
way,
he did.
but either way,
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm just looking at Wikipedia. So
there's a great there's a we won't summarize it because it's a 30-minute video, but he Y Combinator asked JD Vance to give a talk on policy, on his basically like tech policy, I would call it.
mhm,
And that video is floating around Twitter. Maybe we can find it and put it in the show notes. But for people who want to find out his like JD Vance's broader stances on
mhm,
tech policy, I would recommend watching that video.
for sure.
Yeah.
Um, I think there's also really good videos circulating around of like he's talking about crypto and particularly around social media and the role of tokenization and how it's important. Um, and his point is something to the effect of like most of the smartest founders and investors are actively paying attention more and more to crypto. And it's like it's going to be more difficult for incumbents to like compete in a world where you have, for um, legacy firms to compete against like startups that are leveraging this technology. So I think he's pro crypto. Although I haven't seen more to that or his views particularly.
Yeah.
What is interesting though is like if you look at Polymarket, which by the way, I was catching up with Shane and ECC. They hired was it Nate Silver from who's like
Crazy
leading
hire. I actually wanted to
crazy
talk about
hire.
that. Amazing hire,
Yeah,
which we can.
amazing hire.
I love that.
Yeah, he has a great book too. So the odds of Trump, obviously, after the unfortunate incident, like jumped from 60% ish to all the way to 70. Was it like 70? I saw up to 77%, and then they've sort of subsided. They're now back to kind of close to where they were before all of this happened. So they spiked a bit. They're now still at 66%. There's like $250 million betting on this market. So I think it's pretty high signal. um, so yeah, I'm curious. You know, I guess I don't know if you read anything into that, the fact that the odds have kind of come down and are back to where they were before the assassination attempt.
Um, no, I mean the Biden campaign put out something that said that he would consider dropping out if there was a medical condition. And I
And
think
then he
that pulled.
tweeted, "I'm sick,"
And it's
with
yeah,
no thread. Like it was like,
yeah, and so
yeah.
maybe that pulled it back down. I think if you compare like predict it to Polymarket, to like Polymarket tends to skew actually more in Trump's favor if you look at the betting odds, because the people, and I think the theory there is the people betting on Polymarket tend to be more crypto native and
Right.
therefore
Like
more
they want crypto to win. They want
right.
Trump
Yeah.
to win.
So anything politically related, like Trump might be 65%, but then unpredicted it's 60%.
Mhm.
So
Can we talk briefly about Vitalik's post?
yeah, to close the loop on JD, the last thing to add about him is I would call him very pro crypto. There's just I pulled a couple of different things. Like 2021, he issued a statement opposing an amendment to the infrastructure bill, and his reason for opposing it, he said it would amount to a backdoor ban of Bitcoin and other popular cryptocurrencies. 2022, he disclosed that he held between 100 to 250K of Bitcoin. And then 2023, he actually introduced a bill that would protect crypto firms and exchanges from being cut off from traditional banks, right? That was around the time of like choke
Mhm.
point. So um, I think there are other things that are not great about JD Vance, but from a purely crypto perspective, I would say he is a very
Yeah.
pro crypto vice president.
I want to make a pause here to recap all the crazy timeline that over the last 7 days, right? You had an assassination attempt on Trump, dodged by inches. God knows what would happen if he hadn't moved his head. Um, and nomination of a vice president that is very pro crypto, understands industry. You had the Paxos SEC lawsuit dropped. You have Jamie Dimon, which you tweeted about, changing his tune on crypto. Also, rumors that he might be the nominee for what is it, the Treasury role.
Yeah.
And what else on the regulatory side of things I'm missing
Did you say the stablecoin SEC dropped their stablecoin investigation?
with Paxos?
Yeah.
Yeah, that. I also saw a headline that State Street is looking at getting into the stablecoin business.
Yeah, I
I
looked
don't know
into
how
that
much of
more.
that is
I think it feels pretty private blockchainy. I think that's
right.
not as real of a thing.
Yeah. On that point, because people are texting me like, "Oh, what do you read into Jamie Dimon?" Jamie Dimon has been vocal about, like, critical of like Bitcoin, crypto. Um, Internally, though, we've had on the pod, the JP Morgan team that has been pursuing like Onyx, and there's been internal efforts at JP Morgan, quite substantial, I would say, uh, which is sort of like, to me, the most important thing. Um, I don't know. People might be saying, "How real is that?" I don't know what your
Well,
interpretation of that
so
is.
my take on it is, I mean, Jamie Dimon definitely doesn't like Bitcoin. So his
Yeah.
company has a 300 to 3 like JP Morgan has a 300 plus person blockchain team, and we had an interview
Right.
actually with Tyron, who
Tyrone. Yeah.
either runs that team or is like second in command
Hmm.
over there. And so you guys can go listen to it if you want. But like, let me read you these quotes from Jamie Dimon. He said this, and this is a man who said, "quote Satoshi is going to come on there, laugh hysterically, go quiet, and then all the Bitcoin's going to get replaced. How the hell do you know it's going to stop at 21? It's a hyped up fraud. It's a pet rock." That was earlier this year at Davos.
Hmm.
And then another quote, this is from last year. He said, "I personally think Bitcoin is worthless. I could care less about Bitcoin. If you're stupid enough to buy it, you'll pay the price one day. This is the last time I will ever answer a question about Bitcoin. The other day, my daughter sent me an email saying she owns 2 Bitcoin. This was my smart daughter. Well, my formerly smart daughter.
Oh, wow.
So he definitely doesn't like Bitcoin. However, Larry Fink used to say similar things. Like people can
Hmm.
change their mind when like either putting when someone who is more powerful than them twists their arm, or when their capitalist
My,
incentives line up.
yeah,
And
my,
like
my, my, my theory around that is there's a lot of money to be made by selling this ETF product, and Wall Street now can make money on crypto,
also if
and
you bank with JP Morgan, like they're probably the
they're the
largest
largest
private
private
bank,
bank in the world, I
I think,
believe.
in the world. Like
HSBC may be the largest, but JP Morgan's not far, and certainly in the US.
how many people bank with JP Morgan? And this is so the private bank, for people who don't know, is where they'll make a lot of their money from people who have maybe assets of, I think it's what, 10 million or more is the minimum to bank with JP Morgan. You have
Correct.
10 million or more assets, you get a private banker, and you can basically do all of your investments and all of your activities through JP Morgan. They make a lot of money that way. The number of people who are saying, "Wait, I can't hold my Bitcoin here. I can't buy Bitcoin through you guys. This is ridiculous." I've got Larry Fink going on CNBC saying we're buying
Hmm.
Bitcoin and JP Morgan won't let me buy it. So
Yeah.
Jamie
Yeah,
Dimon,
you flip positive as soon as you start losing business, right? It's like, okay.
exactly. So there was a
Yeah.
Forbes article where it said Trump actually, Forbes quoted Trump saying Jamie Dimon has, quote, suddenly changed his tune on Bitcoin. Um,
Hmm.
I have mixed thoughts
That'll
on
be,
Jamie Dimon
that'll
for
be amazing. I
treasury.
mean, of course, I have a ton of respect. I love JP Morgan. That was my house, my home, starting off my career. I'll do it again. So that would be amazing. Like, but
And
the
don't forget Trump. Like Trump picked the Goldman guy, Gary Cohn. Gary Cohn was
Mhm.
his, I think, was Treasury
Right.
Secretary for the first year or two
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
before getting fired. This episode is brought to you by Sei. Sei believes that the EVM is here to stay, but they also believe that the EVM in its current iteration lacks performance and scalability for developers. Sei's recent V2 upgrade has introduced the first high-performance parallelized EVM, coupled with lightning-fast block times and finality of just 390 milliseconds. This V2 upgrade unlocks a new design space with 100x throughput of even the fastest EVM L2s. Stay up to date by following Sei at Sei Network. That's SEI Network. You can also experience Sei's speed firsthand at sei.io. Special thanks to Sei for sponsoring Empire. This episode is brought to you by Polygon. Polygon Labs is developing the next generation of open source, zero knowledge tech to aggregate crypto liquidity and user bases, empowering developers to grow in a unified web of interoperable chains with the Ag layer. That was a big mouthful, so I'm going to tell you what it means in my words. There's all these things popping up, L2s and L3s, and it's chaos, right? If you are building something, you no longer have to worry about bootstrapping liquidity. You can basically just build in the Ag layer to tap into the liquidity of the Ag layer and the users of the Ag layer. You get the users, you get the liquidity. It's the Ag layer. It's hot. It's by Polygon Labs. They've got the Polygon Community Grants Program. It was launched with 1 billion tokens just for Polygon builders. Season 1, it's live right now. It features 35 million in Matic to support the next generation of Polygon builders. Join the aggregated future today by applying at polygon.technology/grants. That's polygon.technology/grants. If you talk to anyone, let them know Blockworks sent you. Hey everyone, wanted to take a quick break to talk about your crypto security. I am excited to tell you more about Harpie, designed to keep your wallet safe 24/7. Harpie is the most advanced wallet security tool. It monitors for risks, blocks detected threats, and recovers your stolen assets all in real time. Picture this. You're browsing late at night and accidentally approve a shady transaction and it's too late to cancel it. I know, I've been there before. Well, now Harpie's got your back. It jumps in, intercepts that transaction, and takes your assets away to a vault that you control, all completely free. It works with all the major wallets on Ethereum, Base, Polygon, and Arbitrum. Head over to harpie.io/empire and set up your free protection today. That's harpie.io/empire. I promise you that your future self will thank you. Now let's get back to today's episode. Hey everyone, wanted to take a second to talk about MyPrize, the first multiplayer casino where you can watch, chat, and play together with your friends and favorite creators. Getting started is super easy. Use a credit card, PayPal, or even crypto to play over 500 games, from classic slots to live table games. Join the MyPrize community now and use referral code EMPIRE to get $20 for free when you make your first deposit or purchase of $10 or more. Head on over to myprize.com/invite/empire. Link will be in the description of today's episode. Let's talk about Larry Fink on CNBC. Did you watch Fink's beautiful boomer commercial for Bitcoin?
I mean, every other day he's going out.
Oh,
He's the
let
best
me
evangelist.
read you this. I'm gonna read. Let me just
But I didn't see that
monologue
one.
this quote for a second. So Larry Fink goes on CNBC. Jim Cramer asks him about Bitcoin. He goes, I'm just gonna read this whole thing. He goes, as you know, I was a skeptic. I was a proud skeptic, and I studied it. But then I learned about it, and I came away and said, my opinion, the last 5 years has been wrong. So here's what I believe today. This is Larry Fink on Bitcoin. He said, I believe Bitcoin is legitimate. It is now a legitimate financial instrument that allows you to have a uncorrelated type of returns. I believe it's an instrument you invest in when you are frightened. It's an instrument you invest in when you believe that countries are debasing their currencies by excess deficits. I believe we have countries where you are frightened for your everyday existence, and now you have the ability to invest in something that is outside of your country's control, giving you more financial freedom. I'm a big believer that there's now a role for Bitcoin in people's financial portfolios. I believe you're going to see that as one of the I believe you're going to see that as one of the assets we all look at one day. I look at it as digital gold, and I think there's a real need for everyone to look at it as an alternative to optimism in the world. If you want to hedge, Bitcoin is not a vehicle for hope. It is a vehicle for people being able to express their fear about something in the world. There is now a great industrial use for it. So the summary of that is, if you believe that your country is going to experience currency debasement, if you cannot get access to a bank account in your country, if you believe that there's chaos in the world and you need a way to hedge, the way to express that trade used to be maybe by shorting something and
buying gold or something,
or buying gold. And Larry Fink says, look, there's now a good new way to do that, and it's by buying Bitcoin.
Agreed. And the ratio of people that are doing that is extremely small. So there's no surprise, right? The U.S. fiscal situation is untenable. Everyone agrees with that. The question is, at what point will the market, one, disagree with that, and then bring it to its knees and humble a country? If it's not the U.S., any other country would have already been humbled by the market. Yet people continue to buy treasuries. Like the demand for that, these auctions have not subsided. There's at some point going to be a day of reckoning. It's go listen to Ray Dalio, Sandra Miller. Everyone agrees. It's like it's an unsustainable budget. What is it now? Like I want to say up to 40% of like the spending of the government goes to cover interest expense or more. So, anyways, a bit unsustainable. However, Japan's been in this situation for a while. Yada yada yada. The thing that like most people seem to say, so what happens in a scenario where macro really takes a shit? What happens in a scenario where like the market kind of wakes up to this, and at what point does that happen, and what does that mean for Bitcoin or other assets? Like, where do you hide? And I think the conclusion that I've heard from most people that are way smarter than me on macro, again, the same people I've talked to this week, was like, I think you just want to be in assets that historically, or you believe going forward, are going to beat inflation, whatever that rate may be.
Yeah.
So what are those? Historically, it's been real estate. It's treated you very well. Gold, to some extent, maybe a basket of other currencies like Swiss franc. Maybe you can look at like some of the Gulf currencies, but they're small, right? There's not enough. So that's like where people like Mark Cuban goes on and says, "Hey, well, in that scenario where Bitcoin catches a real bid, where's the ceiling for that?" Now, not only that. The second point I want to make is, which we've talked about it here at length, is stable coins. Going back to stable coins, it's mostly US denominated, and they're just increasing the demand for dollars globally. Everyone wants to hold dollars, continues to want to hold dollars. So this is like if you're Jamie Dimon going into the position, right, as Secretary of Treasury, what is the most important thing that you're monitoring? That the demand for dollars continues to be strong.
Yeah.
And stablecoins don't interfere with that. Regulated stablecoins like USDC is a godsend. Tether, as an organization, he's like a top 5 or top 10 holder of treasuries. You have a constant buyer for treasuries, and it's coming from this world that historically hasn't had easy access to hold dollars, right? It's all been black market, Argentina. It's not. And so this just immediately increases the ability for people anywhere in the world to hold dollars. Wouldn't you want, like, why would you be against that?
Yeah, you have an infinite bid for treasuries. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think he's seeing that. The other thing that now people are like, of course, putting their super bullish cap on is, imagine, like, what is the probability? And Shane and Nate, if you're here, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. But like, what is the probability of someone of Trump going out saying, "Hey, we're actually going to hold Bitcoin in reserve"? And you had
Trump's got his talk at the Bitcoin conference.
And people are speculating about it.
Yeah,
I mean, imagine that scenario. I mean, let's just be, drink the Kool-Aid for a minute.
Oh my God, Santi's putting on the hat.
I know, right? Not that we needed it. We always skew bullish here. You had Germany sell close to 3 billion of Bitcoin. So you're telling me that you're selling a hard asset to buy for euros that you can print. And imagine a country like the US that says, no, we're actually going to print money to buy Bitcoin. If that, I mean, two couldn't be polar opposites. You know who I'm betting against. But I mean, if you're a central government, like, realistically, if you're in that position, like, whether you want to be public about it or not. But yeah, I would print, you know, fiat and buy Bitcoin,
Yeah.
hold it in
That's what
reserve,
I was
and
talking about last week
as
with
a, as a
Germany
as a
is selling and
hedge.
El Salvador is buying, and this is
Yeah.
a hard asset and a commodity that is moving from
Mhm.
one government to another.
Of course, we've all seen how the president of El Salvador has taken it to the chin when Bitcoin went down from 60 to 20, and he was mocked and ridiculed. Now, the impact of what is transpiring now, even regardless of whether Trump or someone like Jamie Dimon goes out and says that publicly, I think again the narrative is intact. We had an ETF that legitimizes this asset class incredibly, and you best believe that this has just become. You couldn't even whisper Bitcoin when I was at JP Morgan in the elevator. I mean, and that has been the case for forever until recently.
Yeah. Let me
That can't be
read.
overstated. Do you agree or
Yeah,
do you disagree?
I agree. I agree. I mean,
That's
I
it.
think
Why are people
you
trading the
mentioned
chop?
the Mark Cuban thing. Let me just read this tweet for anyone who missed it. He said, "Here's a contrary opinion on the by the way, for context, Mark Cuban does not like Trump and does not want Trump to win. He's been pretty vocally against Trump, but he said, "Look, here's a contrary opinion on the emergence of Silicon Valley support for former President Trump, which, like all opinions on here, probably won't be popular. It's a Bitcoin play. Not because the former president is a far stronger proponent of crypto. That's nice, but it doesn't really impact the price of crypto. It makes it easier to operate a crypto business because of the inevitable and required changes at the SEC. What's going to drive the price of Bitcoin is lower tax rates and tariffs, which, if history is any guide, and it's not always, will be inflationary. Combine that with the global uncertainty as the geopolitical role of the USA and the impact on the US dollar as a reserve currency, and you can't align the stars any better for a Bitcoin price acceleration. So, how high can the price go? And again, this is Mark Cuban continues in part two. How high can the price go? Way higher than you think. Remember, the market for Bitcoin is global, and the supply has a final limit of 21 million with unlimited fractionalization. Keep that in mind as you consider what happens if, because of geopolitical uncertainty and the decline of the dollar as the reserve currency, Bitcoin becomes a safe haven globally, which means that Bitcoin could be what countries and all of us look to buy as a means to protect our savings. Crazy? It already happens in countries facing hyperinflation. And if things really go further than we can imagine today, and I'm not saying they will, just that this has a possibility somewhere above zero, then Bitcoin becomes exactly what the maxis envision, a global currency."
Mhm. There you have it. I mean, I don't know much Bitcoin, but I think it's the ultimate meme, right? I mean, of course, once you hit 80, 90, once it clears 100, what's stopping it from going to 150? And then once it hits 200, I mean, it gets memed into existence. Like, what's stopping it from going to a million? Of course, flows. I'm not dumb. Um, but I was having a conversation with the founder today, and I referenced one of my favorite books, which is Scale by Jeffrey West. And basically, this point is the brain doesn't understand exponential phenomena. And that continues to happen in this world as we're becoming more connected and capital is moving freely. Yeah, I think like the size of the market, like imagine like Bitcoin at a million would entail, pretty large market cap at that. But if central banks come on board, or even a large institutional plays, it's certainly possible.
Yeah.
People should go listen to Kathy Wood. Of course, she's not afraid to put out bold predictions, not just on crypto, but also on things like Tesla. And what was her prediction? 150,000, 250,000.
No, I think it was
Yeah.
1.5 million.
Oh, 1.5 million. That's exactly it. There you go. Yeah, yeah. In many ways, it's pretty refreshing to have people outside the industry, newcomers, come in and be less cynical. Because I think there's a phenomenon where the longer you stay in crypto and you see cycles, like you can turn cynical. Not You should always be skeptical, but cynical is just I think it's like pollutes the mind in many ways, and you become like incredibly, you know and I think that probably happened too in the internet and other technological revolutions. I don't know if Carlota Perez talks explicitly about this, but like if say you lose money, then you become like disheartened, and then all of a sudden you don't believe in this tech, and
Mm,
you don't
yeah.
believe in memes, you get burned, and like you hate it, and then you walk away. And yeah, in many ways, maybe TradFi is what probably makes the most amount of money in this asset class over the next 10 years than like
Yeah, right.
crypto OGs, you know what I mean?
What
Vitalik's
else?
post,
Do I what?
Vitalik's post, just to round out the political discussion.
Sure.
Crypto is political, whether you like it or not. The Vitalik puts out a blog post. We're not going to go into too much detail. People should go read it if you want. But he says something to the effect of you shouldn't vote specifically for candidates that are pro crypto. You should take a longer term view and vote for, make a decision that is not just purely based on ideologies, single issue crypto.
Reminds me of an op-ed that came out a couple weeks ago.
Right. Yes. Exactly. Well, you guys tied into the stick.
I saw that. I saw that post go
The
up.
response
And
was quite different.
I was
Let's
like,
put it that way. Like,
A, Vitalik's about to write the same post we just wrote and get away with it. And B,
well, yeah, the favoritism is
Godspeed to you,
Vitalik.
Vitalik, because you are also about to get shredded online.
Well, he was shredded on a number of, vaccination. People like the mob likes to comment. My point is, look, it's not a practical post. It's like people need to vote for, and so I get it. I get what he's trying to say, which is be long term, have a long term mindset. But let's just ground the discussion, right? We've been in a very hostile environment, and how do you expect people to react to that? I mean, I think the reality of things, and you're a far better political, expert than I am. I'm not, but something that I've appreciated, and I'd love your take on, is this idea that like political dynamics across the world have unfortunately become more polarizing. Not just in the US. You have extreme left, extreme right. You're seeing it in Europe, in France, in the UK, in the Netherlands, in Germany, across Latin America. It's just extreme right, extreme left. In large part, I have my reasons. I think like inequality, disenfranchisement, this feeling of like, no one's serving you. So you need to go to extremes. So unfortunately, Paul is, when you're going to vote, it's like you're cornered into taking a far extreme, right? Either left or right. And so you just have to like put it in that context. And when you do, then you say, okay, you invert and you say, it's not so much as choosing who's pro crypto. It's just more so, voting for someone, not voting for someone that's very much against its existence, right? If your livelihood depends on it, if you truly believe you're here, you believe this technology can have a meaningful impact, and be positive for society and really change, I believe it, then how would you not vote? I guess who in their right mind would vote for someone that is extremely hostile and has been? It's not it's, I don't know. Like, I don't know how other way to say it, but it's like, I'm thinking long term as much as Vitalik is here. I'm not thinking in 4-year terms. I'm thinking, how do I make sure that this industry thrives? Because I believe its potential. I think it fits to solve so many things. It's not perfect, but it's not perfect in large part because it's been handicapped by and so when I see a window of opportunity, it's not to say that I agree with policies either extreme left or extreme right. I don't necessarily believe in like, you know what I mean? Like other topics outside of crypto, like abortion or, where foreign aid goes or whatever other policies that might get, a politician needs to talk about. But I just think, I don't know, like first of all, I'm not voting in the US, but like if I could, I don't know, like I'm not going to vote for someone that's hostile to the industry. Simple as that. I'm not going to maybe abstain, but like I want to vote. So what do you do?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's one of these things where like crypto people are just like very ideological. It's grounded to the fucking ground. And what are like, you know what I mean? Like just give a sense of reality. It's so abstract and it's kind of frustrating to see that, especially coming from him. And I agree. I get his point. I get his message. And maybe in his position, I would do the same. I'm not in his position to have liberty to speak more freely.
So I thought Molly Jane's piece on Blockworks was much better than Vitalik's piece. Vitalik was asked, because Vitalik's piece centered around one question. He said, if a politician is pro crypto, the key question to ask is, are they in it for the right reasons? do they have a vision of how technology and politics and the economy should go in the 21st century, and does that align with yours? And do they have a good positive vision that goes beyond near-term concerns? And if they do, then great, you should support them. And but if not, don't vote for them. What I'd say to Vitalik is like that is the most unicorns and
Yeah.
like
Pie in the
fairy
sky.
tale
What's a
I
real politic? You know, like what's a
like
Autobahn Bismarck way of
fairy tale
policy?
idea of like what a politician is, and like they're good luck trying to like this idea of are they in it for the right reasons? Like at the highest levels of politics, they're they're in it for the power of politics and to be at that level. And that is my like extreme belief. I think
Yeah.
at the
It's a
congressional
difference
level and
between
then
theory and practice.
I think in local politics, people like really do get involved for the right reasons. And like even at the congressional level, people get involved at the right reasons. But at the presidential level, like why is Trump going pro crypto? Honestly, I don't think Trump gives a damn about crypto. I think he's just realizes that like the fair
Let
shake
me
pack
ask you
is
a
the
question.
third largest pack.
Because it's for
So
the reasons that we've been advocating for this technology. Because you're seeing entrepreneurs leave the U.S. because, you see that it's, stablecoin is increasing demand for U.S. dollars because you want to keep the U.S. as at the forefront of innovation because it's becoming a frontier of tech. Like, what more reasons do you want? I mean, it's again like, uh, yeah, I don't know what to say. It's other than like people have interest in like Jamie Dimon or like other people. Like everyone has a motive. If you're it's kind of surprising in many ways because like blockchain, we think that we understand incentives, and then you come out with something like this, and it's like, okay, well, the reality is that I think the operating assumption, if you go as back as a white paper of Bitcoin, is like people will act in their self best interest. That should always be the operating assumption. That's the reality of things. And you know, it's hard to understand like, or even like take an opinion of like the ulterior or the deep motives of why people like tech. It's like that idea of like, oh, people are just here because they want to make money. And is that a bad thing? It's going to drive adoption. It's going to fund projects. I don't see a problem with that. Markets, like there was a time where I was really interested in politics, but then I came to the conclusion that the real impact happens in you just got to be pro market because the market is far more efficient to allocate resources and to coordinate. And you just have to be pro market. And as government light as possible because governments are just not very good coordination to coordinate and to allocate resources. They're there to like provide security, tragedy of the commons, protect parks, taxation, mostly provide security. But when you have like failed states or you have like places where like what happened in California in 2 years, 3 years that I was living there, it just went from being this idyllic, like best place in the world to like, holy shit, I need to get out of here.
yeah.
Musk who's now endorsing Trump, which is a big impact, is now moving the headquarters of both X and SpaceX away from California to Texas, I believe.
Hmm.
And that all just happened last week. Dominoes are falling. Why? Because I believe that there was a new law that was enacted in California that like they could take something effective, like they could take your kids away for some of this transgender stuff. But like
It was that I think if a kid comes to the school and says, I want to convert or something like that, then there's now a law that just got signed in or is about to get signed in that says the school doesn't have to tell the parent or
right,
can't tell the parent or something like that.
something like that. Yeah. Yeah. So w- when you do that, if you're a politician, like putting aside whether that's right or wrong, think about the tax revenue that all of a sudden California lost and has been losing for the last couple of years. And other states, like, and everyone's moving to Miami. Like Ken Griffin moved from Chicago to Miami. Ken Griffin was like single digit percentage of tax revenue for the state. Now he's buying $45 million dinosaurs. Kudos to him. Um, But you know what I mean? Like that's a practical reality of things where like if you have these policies, like that's what I'm thinking. Like say you're pro crypto, that's gonna bring more tax revenue because it's gonna bring ensure that businesses like Coinbase that have created so much employment continue to be built in America. And I think that is the most important thing, particularly at a time where the budget is like, not particularly sound.
Yeah.
Right? So anyways, that's a little bit of a rant, but I think it's just we ought to be practical. And yeah, like if you disagree with things, I totally get it. I'm not, but I go back to this idea like political dynamics can just have become extreme, right? You need to put one name on the ballot, and that you can't choose 50% Trump and 50%. I mean, it's no politics. You need to make it's that unfortunate trade off that you always have had to make.
Yeah. Good pod, sir.
Yeah. Anything else?
No, Blockworks is hiring. We got some open roles. So if people like the pod, you should come work at Blockworks. Come work with Santi and me. We actually have a
Yeah.
head of pod. We have a head of podcast ops role.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
mentioned. I saw that in your update, by the way.
Yeah, director of
Have you
podcast
found that?
operations. So here are the open roles. We have a director of podcasts, someone to like basically run the P&L of the podcast network and run all the operations. We have a podcast host role for the Lightspeed podcast. We have
Right.
3 engineering roles open: senior backend engineer, senior data engineer, and then another senior backend engineer for more data products. We have an event operations role. We have a senior research data analyst, and then actually a director of sales role. So someone to lead the media and ad sales team, which is a 9-person team, seven sellers and 2 account managers today.
Nice. So we tweeted about what other people wanted to listen. I'm just going through the list. I think we covered a lot of it. Memecoins, we covered DeFi narrative to some extent and why that could go up.
Oh, I have a thing, Santi. So one thing Santi and I have been talking about that I'd love the listeners' take on is we both want to cover more companies that are doing interesting things that haven't been seen before in crypto, because it really does feel like there's this like kind of big infrastructure fatigue. And just like kind of infra exhaustion and like what can crypto really do. So a company like that would be so we were talking about having Skytrade on. So Santi and I both invested in this air rights company called Skytrade, but they're pre-seed, right? Like so they're pre-seed company, and they're basically creating there's an air like the air rights marketplace, bringing it on chain. So my pro for doing that episode on Empire is I think it's a really, really, really interesting use case that literally nobody's talking about. Also, I think that like just air rights in general, crypto side, are very interesting and not many people know about them. The counter is you bring on that guest. It's like, wait, this is some pre-seed company that like Jason and Santi just invested in. So I think I'd like to bring on some of those guests. But if people think like, hey, I don't want to listen to these people, I'd love for you guys to DM us or post on Twitter and tag us and let us know if you want to see more of those or less of those.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, historically, we've done some of that. We've tried to skew more to more repeat guests that people tend to enjoy, talking about what's kind of most interesting to most people. But it would be useful. I the way I've initially, when you and I talked about Empire and what direction we wanted to take, is there is some element of getting ahead of narratives, bringing on people that are going to talk about things that they're building that proves that crypto is meaningful, that it touches the real world and can impact your life. More so, telling you things that you haven't seen yet that are going to become important in 6 months or in a year. And I think we've done that to some extent. Of course, we can't cover it all, but yeah, I tend to think it's super interesting. Something like Skytrade is a perfect example. By the way, I can't tell you how many people reach out like, wow, this sounds super interesting. Can I get an intro?
More people than I ever have.
It has been the company that I've gotten the most amount of inbounds from funds being like, can I get an intro? Because it sounds super interesting.
Same with me. Jonathan was like, oh my God, a lot of investor intros. I was like, I've never had so
made made like 5 investor intros to Jonathan.
Yeah, I made one last night and they said, Santi already made this one. So I said, all right, fine. We got huge breaking news to wrap this podcast, which is Trump to announce a USA Bitcoin strategic reserve in Nashville.
Really? No. Is it?
I'll show you this. I mean, this is from this random guy named Dennis Porter. Huge breaking. Trump to announce sauces. We got
he should have capitalized sources.
P.S. This is not a joke. My sources are credible.
Yeah, it's like that Paul Graham post, like some very high people I know have cautioned you to hold Bitcoin.
Yeah. No, so I actually could see. So I know. So David Bailey. Is Trump's main Bitcoin advisor, and David Bailey runs Bitcoin Magazine, which is how they got Trump as a keynote speaker for the Bitcoin conference. I actually could see Trump saying that they're doing a Bitcoin reserve, but then, which would be like obviously ridiculously bullish. Don't think they'd probably follow through on it, but I would say non-zero chance that he actually says that. So
always thinking probabilities, and
yeah,
there's a lot of things that I didn't have in my bingo card. So
truly.
just to round out the discussion, Howard Marks, which I love, him and Sandra Miller, probably my favorite two investors, and Soros. He came out with a good post today or yesterday, and I listened to it today. Very nice. People should go read it. Super shorter, nice.
Yeah, nice. The thing we didn't talk about, ETH ETF comes next week. So like 3 days we'll have ETH ETFs.
Yeah, just as a parting thought, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that this would just be a brushed over comment at the end of the pod of the ETH ETFs is coming?
Side note. So
just a side note, footnote.
Appreciate
have
you guys
a great
listening.
Hope everyone's listening from some beach, running, getting some exercise in, some sun, and enjoying.
To the listener who said, "Can you stop sipping your drink and chewing ice?" Like, what the fuck? You don't know how annoying it is to listeners. I will let you know. I did not chew a single piece of ice and only took 3 sips of my coffee today. So you are welcome. You are welcome.
Yeah, seriously. I also saw that. I'm like,
I'm here to serve you.
No ice. And, sorry for the slurping. Anyways, thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next week.
See you next week. Cheers, folks.
All right. Cheers.
Thanks again to Sei for sponsoring this episode. There are a ton of reasons to build on Sei. Reach out to me if you'd like to get in touch with their team. But if you're itching to get started building or using the ecosystem, head over to sei.io to get started, and be sure to let them know that we sent you.